Now that we are amongst the living dead, we are going to need a lot more money to retire on.
Yes. With the zombie apocalypse soon approaching, there will be a shortage of everything good.
I am not really prepared to feast on brains morning, noon and night or walk around the planet like this. That would just be crazy.
I do understand your frustration, darling, but do try not to upset yourself so. Try not to dwell on the glory days of our past life at the Research Institute.
Those were such promising years. You were all about the dynamic stochastic general equilibrium and I was all about privatization. We had some of our best times with Laffer and his trickle-down hypothesis. Now look what has become of us.
Who knew scribbling curved lines on a tab and napkin could unleash such a cult of believers?
Probably the bartender knew.
You are so right. Of course a bartender would recognize the true absurdity of their trickle-down theory. Still, even though most studies clearly show that the rich are now the uber-rich, the poor the destitute, politicians like Paul Ryan and Scott Walker continue to feed us the brains of the American middle class.
In my heart I knew that such deliberately engineered financial inequality could not survive. I suppose I was counting on the great moderation and the efficient markets hypothesis to prevent our demise.
Oh, it's not as bad as all that. We are, after all, still living of sorts. Agreed, the brains of this year's Republican hopefuls hardly count as a Food Network or Gordon Ramsay challenge, but they are still ours to gorge ourselves on.
What's the point in being a zombie if one cannot gorge on the living? Frankly, after such a severe crash in the financial markets in 2008, I don't understand why we didn't just die off. Such a market meltdown in practical terms was larger than the Great Depression, making this past event the Grand Depression that dare not to speak its name.
One would think that such a crisis would bury the concept of the efficient markets hypothesis forever. However, followers of Eugene Farmer and Paul Samuelson won't hear of it. How lucky for us. I wonder how many more of us will reanimate. I must invest in a good cookbook to learn how best to prepare organ meat.
No doubt all of our old gang from the Institute have reanimated at the bequest of the investment houses, lobbyists and politicians.
It would be so nice to meet up with old friends. Think of all the discussions late into the night.
The trouble with so many of us resurrecting is that we can all target the same food supply. Once we all begin consuming, we convert others, who will then in turn convert others until there is a total breakdown of civilization. What shall we do? However will we survive the apocalypse?
Don't you see, dear, that our opportunity to invest for our retirement under this protracted era of free market liberalism rests in the logic of both creating and profiting from the next bubble? Since we already know that most of the population will become flesh-eating zombies, we must invest in companies that will find a way to consume other zombies before anyone knows about it.
How brilliant of you. Surely companies like Creolive, Inland Eye and Stratocraft could redirect their energies from heart valves, bone tissue and cornea replacements to food supplements for the up-and-coming zombie population.
With foresight, an investment in Philip Morris would also be wise.
Yes, from cigarettes to Nabisco. Philip Morris would be a likely candidate for the eventual mass production and distribution of the product. I am feeling much less anxious now that we have a plan.
I'm so glad you're feeling better, darling. Our plan is indeed a solid one. What could possibly take it off the rails? What was that?
I think that was the sound of the Eurozone crashing.